have a priority claim on the resources of developed countries. And the Pope has also approved the dropping of sexist terminology in the Mass. A coalition of 3 Protestant agencies has sent a $324,000 shipment of food and clothing to Poland. A national poll indicates that 76% of Americans believe public schools should teach both the evolutionary and creationist theories of human origins. Now, on our program today, we're going to hear about a week-long festival that was recently held at Whittier College. That's to celebrate the Quaker heritage. But first, we're going to meet a rabbi who has wrestled with the problems of pain and grief. He's going to share with us some of the insights that he has gained when bad things happen to good people. So welcome to Odyssey, Rabbi Harold Kushner. We want to ask, a lot of people have an interest in why do bad things happen to good people, but you have kind of a special experience that brought you to write the book.
Right on both counts, Carol. First of all, the question does seem to be universal. I can't check into a hotel or take a taxi without the clerk or the driver looking at the title of my book and saying, hey, you've written the story of my life. I'm the rabbi of a congregation of some 500 or 600 families, and I'm dealing with their problems all the time. But the very personal motivation for writing this was the story of our son, who died at the age of 14 of a very rare disease called progeria. It's better known now than it was a month ago, because those 2 boys who met at Disneyland a few weeks ago, they suffered from progeria. It means rapid aging. It means they stop growing, they remain very small, painfully thin, and they usually die in their teens.
Now, a lot of people, when they go through a situation like this, when something bad happens near them or to them, they tend to blame themselves or tend to look for some reason of what did I do. Why do you think we do this?
I think we're desperate to make sense of the world. We would like to think that the world makes sense. And if an innocent person suffers, especially if we're not the innocent person suffering, it's very easy to say, you must have done something wrong to deserve it. After all, you're not perfect. Even if we're the person, the good person that the bad thing happens to, we're so motivated to say, I must have done something. I'm being punished for my sins. Parents who give birth to a retarded child or a deformed child, their first reaction inevitably is, what did I do wrong? What am I being punished for? People who suddenly suffer a business reverse, any kind of trauma. I tell the story in my book about the young wife whose husband walked out on her. She goes home to her parents. She's heartbroken. She's grieving. They comfort her. They're angry at the husband. And then after an hour or so, they start to grill her. What did you do wrong? Weren't you responsive enough? Weren't you sympathetic enough? Did you spend too much money? Did you not keep the house properly? Their reasoning is, you did something wrong and it's your fault. And gee, Carol, that's exactly the wrong thing to say to a person who's been hurt. In order to make sense of the world, to do it at the price of the person who is feeling so much pain and anguish already.
Is it the wrong thing to say, or is it perhaps, in your view, the wrong conclusion?
Both, I think. I think, first of all, it's really not true. I don't think that when bad things happen to good people, it's a punishment. I believe very strongly God does not wake up in the morning and decide whom to afflict with a heart attack, whom to send a malignant tumor. He doesn't decide which airplane should crash, which automobiles should collide. I don't think that's what God does. I don't think these tragedies come from God. If anything, it's the heroism, the bravery, the resilience, the unselfishness of people. That's what I believe comes from God.
But a lot of religions are based on the theory that God controls everything, that everything happens as part of a divine scheme. Do you kind of deny this, or?
Sure. Let's suppose for a moment that that's open to question. I'm not saying yet it's a mistake. I'm saying let's talk about it without any preconceptions. Which description is really more glorifying of God? To say that he's powerful, but always kind? Or to say that he's kind, but not necessarily powerful? Is power a more authentic religious quality than kindness? Do we admire God because he has all this power? Or do we admire him because he's kind and compassionate and helpful? I'd like to believe that the kindness, the compassion, the pity, the righteous indignation that I feel in the face of suffering, that this is God's kindness and God's anger reflecting itself in me. Let's suppose further for just a moment that there are some things which God doesn't control, that human beings are free to choose to be helpful or destructive, choose to be honest or deceitful. And God doesn't affect our power to choose. That way, if we're good, we get the moral credit for it. If we choose to be bad, we take the responsibility. Let's assume that laws of nature, laws of gravity, laws of sickness, that these affect people indiscriminately. Nature is blind. Nature is amoral. Nature is earthquakes, forest fires, epidemics, destroying everybody in its path, whether they're good people or bad people. Those things don't come from God because God is not morally neutral, the way earthquakes and forest fires are. I find that we're talking about a much more powerful God because it takes much more power to rebuild than to destroy. Anybody can destroy, anybody can break, but only a really powerful God can create and recreate. And if we excuse God from blame for these horrible, unfair, unjust, painful things that we witness, and instead we find him being real in people's lives, in human response, human bravery, human resiliency, there's a God that I could worship.
To use an example from your book, there was a lady who had just found out that she had an incurable disease.
Right.
And you said it was hard for her to live with that, but it was equally hard for her to accept the fact that there was nobody in the driver's seat. Is that where we are? Nobody in the driver's seat?
Some of the time, yes. Most of the world, I think, is a beautiful, well-coordinated, coherent world. Most everything makes sense. Where I differ from some religious authorities and from some people is in saying that if 97% of everything out there makes sense, the other 3% must make sense also, but I can't figure it out. There's a lot of things I can't figure out. But Carol, I'm prepared to say that there are things which are random. I'm prepared to say that things happen for which there is no reason, at least no morally sufficient reason. I don't know why a young mother gets leukemia. I can't believe it's the will of God. I can understand perhaps why a person who's full of anger and anguish will drink too much, get into his car and drive home irresponsibly, and he'll cause an accident. So far I can understand it. Why he runs into the red Chevrolet instead of the green Ford, why this family is the victim of a drunk driver instead of that family, you're going to have a lot of trouble convincing me that God wants it to happen in precisely this way. There is chance, there's randomness now. I'm prepared to say that there are some things in the world where God is not in the driver's seat. If you will, go back and read the first page of the Bible with God creating the world, finishing it by the eve of the seventh day, by Friday afternoon. Maybe God didn't quite finish. Maybe there's a little bit of work that was left, chaos that he couldn't turn into orderliness. And that's why things happen which just don't make moral sense.
We just have a few seconds left, but you wrote the book to basically deal with your grief. Do you feel this has helped you?
It's helped me because it permits me to take the meaningless death of our son and impose meaning on it. Take an event which had no purpose, give it a purpose that other people will be helped in their grief by what my wife and I and our daughter experienced, by what I've put into my book.
Okay. We thank Rabbi Kushner from Natick, Massachusetts, and he has written a book entitled When Bad Things Happen to Good People, dealing with the question of grief and why bad things happen. Thank you very much.
Cheryl, thank you.
John Greenleaf Whittier, for whom both the town and the College of Southern California are named, is known as the Quaker poet. His poetry and prose were inspired by religious ideals and were influential in bringing about the abolition of slavery. It was, therefore, most appropriate that the first event at the recent Quaker Festival was in honor of this prominent literary, political, and religious man. And for the Whittier service, John LaMontagne, Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, created a number of hymn anthems using texts by John Greenleaf Whittier. Now, we're first going to hear the poem Ascent of Man, read by actor Peter Mark Richman. This is going to be followed by an actual recording from the service of this piece, performed by the First Friends Church Chancel Choir and Orchestra of Whittier. Colleen Robeson is the minister, Eugene Riddle, choir master.
Sometimes gleams upon our sight, through present wrong, the eternal right. And step by step, since time began, we see the steady gain of man. Through harshest noises of our day, a low, sweet prelude finds its way. Through clouds of doubt and creeds of fear, a light is breaking, calm and clear. Henceforth my heart shall sigh no more for olden time and holier shore. God's love and blessing then and there are now. and here and everywhere.
And here to tell us a bit more about the beliefs and the practices of one Quaker-based organization are David Ettinger, Kitty Baragato, and Crystal Balvin-Hintz. And welcome to Odyssey this morning.
Thank you.
We could start, first of all, to learn a little bit about the Quaker heritage. We need to know something about 17th century man in England, George Fox, the message that he created for the Quakers.
Well, there is a lot to know about George Fox, but I think the tenet that is most important that he left with friends has to do with the fact that there is that of God in every person, at least Quakers accept this. And for me, one of the things it means when I interpret it is that it also relates to the Quaker peace testimony that we'll be talking a lot about here today. And that's that you can't really strike another person or kill or maim another human being when you believe that that human being is sacred, because that something sacred resides in him just as it resides in you.
Quaker religion has been called Christianity plainly writ, or writ plain. Is that the terminology? It's a plainness of philosophy, of dress, of customs.
Of simplicity. And I think the early friends reverted to simplicity or to the simple dress because they had a desire to unclutter their lives. They thought that that freed you, that it liberated you to go on to other things. And so they, in some of the early advices, there are passages about uncluttering your life and going after what is simple and beautiful. And so the costumes that we're seeing today represent that attempt. However, some of us feel that that was carried on a bit long.
Yeah, yes. Today, does that simplicity carry through? Or we obviously don't do the same thing with the costumes. But...
Well, it's sort of left to everybody, according to their own lights, to choose how to live their own life. But if you are a member of a meeting, you are given certain queries. And these are questions you address to yourself, different ones each month. And one of them does very often relate to this. How are you simplifying your life so that you're not exploiting anyone else and not cluttering it up too much?
Now, the Quakers started in England in the 1650s, and then they moved to America. Is it a slow start here, or?
Well, Kitty, you want to speak to that?
Well, George Fox came among some other people, and he started out in New England, and he found a lot of people who wanted to hear what he had to say. And a lot of that had to do with his feeling that there needed to be no person in between an individual and God, so that each person could indeed be open to hear from God and to speak, and we don't need a preacher or a minister to do that for us. And a lot of people liked that idea. On the other hand, a lot of people who were in already established churches here in America felt a bit threatened by that, so the early Quakers were indeed set apart and sometimes persecuted.
What was the early religion like in New England? What practices like?
What were the early Quaker?
In New England here, different from, say, what was happening in England?
I think probably they were more or less the same. The people came together and met in silence, however. They didn't have a preacher to lead them in whatever service was happening. And when an individual felt inspired to speak, he or she would rise and speak to the whole congregation.
But they were persecuted in the early days of this country, and one of Whittier's poems about Mary Dyer refers to the persecution she suffered, and she was eventually hung in Boston, as you know, or in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia?
In Boston.
In Boston.
And most
Okay.
Americans would be familiar with the state of Pennsylvania as sort of a result of the
Yes.
Quaker settlement, because William Penn, a rather well-to-do English friend, started the colony of Pennsylvania. It was a grant from the King of England as an experiment in trying to put into practice his Quaker beliefs in a new country, in a new land, where Quakers and others who maybe faced religious persecution in other places could come and attempt to live according to their religious beliefs without persecution. And that's how the state of Pennsylvania began.
Maybe we should move on to the present-day projects, and the American Friends Service Committee is something that, how does that differ from, say, just the Quaker membership?
The American Friends Service Committee is a Quaker-based organization. It cannot speak for all Quakers, but I am a staff member of that group, and we work in various ways to try and carry out the testimonies of the Society of Friends. And mostly that has to do with working in trying to help people reconcile differences, or help nations do that, to help people who are in trouble, and to try and, I'm sorry, I'm not able to really say this anymore.
Okay, but the things that you're doing worldwide, that what you would like to do as, say, the American Friends Service Committee?
Well, for example, Quakers have always been interested in when people are suffering as a result of war or natural catastrophes, attempt to provide direct relief. And Quakers have been doing this for a long time, and the American Friends Service Committee throughout its history has attempted to provide direct relief. We got started during the First World War in direct relief work with the civilian victims of the First World War in Europe, and at different stages in our some 64-year history have been involved in this sort of direct attempt to meet human needs where they exist.
The Service Committee will be 65 years old in April of next year. And it started out, the AFSC, the American Friends Service Committee, as being an organization that conscientious objectors could put their efforts into. And Friends served in ambulance corps and provided relief, and particularly after the Second World War, there was a great deal of that. And relief is still a major or a large part of what we do, and as are domestic programs. And a lot of the philosophy for that here in this country is based on empowering people to deal with the concerns that they feel are paramount in their own community. We try to avoid, wherever possible, proselytizing or carrying, trying to fit people into boxes. Rather, you wait and see what affects them, and then try to find ways to help them meet that. And the same is true in the relief programs.
You mentioned a moment ago the arms race and what is going on internationally and try to establish peace between nations. One of the things that you've advocated is the freeze on the arms race. There are a lot of people that feel you can't trust the other guy. How do you think you can work that out?
Well, in terms of the freeze, for those who are not familiar, this is an idea that's been going throughout the country now, being voted favorably on in local elections around the country. And the idea is that given the fact that both the United States and the Soviet Union, the two major superpowers, have a rough equivalence or parity in terms of their nuclear stockpile, that this is the time that we ought to call on both governments to put a freeze on that stockpile and give ourselves, in essence, some breathing space, some time to try to work out a long-term arrangement where we can get a handle on this nuclear arms race, which threatens all of us. And in terms of the question of trust, that's an important question. People are concerned about that. And the fact of the matter is that in the brief history of arms control negotiations and treaties with the U.S. and the Soviet Union, which basically starts in the early 1960s up to the present, that both in the U.S., when they sat down at the conference table, when they both seen a common interest in putting some sort of control on the arms race, and when both sides were convinced they could check up on the other guy and verify, those agreements have been kept. It's not an easy process, but there is a historical basis for moving in that direction, attempting to get some sort of control on this nuclear arms race.
Do you think there is any situation when there might be, say, a justified war where we might have to get into that situation?
Well, in terms of the basic Quaker philosophy, it's a pacifist position in terms of its interpretation of the Christian gospel, or coming from slightly different perspectives. So at heart, AFSC and the large number of the Society of Friends, not everyone, would take a basically pacifist position. But in terms of, you have to deal in the real world, and many friends feel that this nuclear arms freeze is a practical first step in what will have to be a very long road towards some sort of a real international situation where we can get along without resolving our conflicts by war. Many people like to think of themselves as modern-day abolitionists. Just as Whittier tried to abolish slavery, many people are concerned about the institution of war as something that should be abolished eventually if we're all to survive.
Okay, we want to thank you for explaining a little bit more about Quakers for us. Thank you very much. And continuing our exploration of the Society of Friends, actor Peter Mark Richman now returns to read from A Quaker Reader. Now, this collection of historic Quaker writings was compiled by Jessamine West. And among the many writings of the celebrated author is the book Friendly Persuasion, on which the feature film was based. Peter Mark Richman, writer, painter, and star of stage, television, and film, also appeared in that motion picture.
It was not by strength of argument or by a particular inquiry of each doctrine and convincement of my understanding that I came to receive and bear witness of the truth, but by being secretly reached by this life. For when I came into the silent assemblies of God's people, I felt a secret power among them which touched my heart. And as I gave way unto it, I found the evil weakening in me and the good raised up. And so I became thus knit and united unto them, hungering more and more for the increase of this power and life, whereby I might feel myself perfectly redeemed. I don't want to express a great many words, but I want you to be called home to the substance. For the scriptures and all the books in the world can do no more. Jesus could do no more than to recommend this comforter, which was the light in him. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. And if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, because the light is one in all, and therefore it binds us all together in the bonds of love. For it is not only light, but love, that love which casts out all fear. There is a spirit which I feel that delights to do no evil, nor to revenge any wrong, but delights to endure all things, in hope to enjoy its own in the end. Its hope is to outlive all wrath and contention, and to weary out all exaltation and cruelty, or whatever is of a nature contrary to itself. It sees to the end of all temptations. As it bears no evil in itself, so it conceives none in thoughts to any other. If it be betrayed, it bears it, for its ground and spring is the mercies and forgiveness of God.
Let's take a look now at some upcoming community events. Everyone is invited to a festival of services and music this afternoon at the Angelica Lutheran Church. A handbell concert at 4:30 precedes evensong at 5. And this service features Robert Gaylord at the organ. The church is at 1345 South Burlington Avenue in Los Angeles. Registrations are now being taken for a class at USC on justice, conscience, and nuclear war. The course, which runs from January 13th to May 5th, is co-sponsored by USC's School of Religion, Institute of Changing Ministries, and College of Continuing Education. For further information or registration, you can telephone area code 213-743-7720. Treasures of Ancient Nigeria, an exhibit of Africa's most sophisticated civilizations, contains many religious objects of these peoples. It's at the California State Museum of Science and Industry. That's open daily from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Elephants and Ivories in South Asia, an exhibition containing sculptures of Hindu and Buddhist importance, is now at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. That's open daily except Monday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 5905 Wilshire Boulevard. Johnny Whitaker, television and screen star, presents a variety program next Saturday evening at 7:30 at the Los Angeles Mormon Temple. That's at 10777 Santa Monica Boulevard in West Los Angeles. And finally, for those who want to trim up after the holidays, the West Side Jewish Community Center is starting an early bird swim program. And for full information, you can call area code 213-938-2531. Thank you for joining us. I'm Carol Hutchison, wishing you a good week and a very happy New Year.